Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Green Future session on Just and Green Recovery from Grassroots Engagement, hosted by Ministry of Environment of Republic of Korea, Korea CSO's network to the 2021 P4G Summit, and Global Social Economy Forum.
How does P4G promote sustainability and inclusiveness in its partnership? A second question is, what is P4G different from the privatization or outsourcing of public goods and services?
Thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be a part of this session. And before responding to these questions, I'd like to give you a brief account of P4G in general for your reference. And P4G, that stands for Partnering for Green Growth and Global Goals 2030, which means Sustainable Development Goals. And the purpose of P4G is to address climate change and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And the methodology of P4G is the public-private partnership. And as moderator Professor Kim mentioned, the P4G brings the government, the business, and the civil society, they all together in one place to address climate change. So, and the P4G, unlike any other international bodies, is an inclusive multilateral platform encompassing various stakeholders, unlike any other international bodies. And what I want to highlight here is that if it is not inclusive, it will not be sustainable. As you are well aware, the climate change is a global issue. So no single actor can deliver in addressing climate change. This means without participation of developing countries, the climate change cannot be solved. So the P4G focus on supporting the developing countries for their efforts in addressing climate change and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And as far as the civil society is concerned, they can play a certain role through the monitoring and make the productive proposal for the vulnerable people in the context of the transition, the just transition. So like this, P4G can promote sustainability and inclusiveness in its partnerships. And once again, I'd like to highlight that if it is not inclusive, it will not be sustainable. And with regard to the second question, it's a very huge question, as you mentioned. Yeah. And one of the characteristics of the P4G is that at the initial stage of the project, the government provides funds to the project, and if the project runs well, it will be scaled up. And if the scaled project goes well, and then we invite the business sector to make investment, ultimately establishing the business, the model. So like this, P4G places higher value on the establishment of the sustainable business model. And as for the P4G is concerned, the government will continue to support the public goods and public services as long as they are public goods. So I view that the public goods means they symbolize the market failure. The government action starts from the market failure. So the P4G will not shift the responsibility from the public sector to private sector in the form of privatization or public sector, the outsourcing, and P4G will cooperate in partnerships. Once again, the P4G will continue to support the public goods and services as long as they are public ones. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on second speaker, Ranja Sengupta. She is now the Senior Researcher and Coordinator, Third World Network from India. Second question, what position and action does civil society take in the public and private partnership for green recovery and SDGs implementation?
There is globally a call now by civil society organizations to reclaim public services, such as in health, education, water, and energy, from privatization or PPP models. And why is that? CSOs believe that for SDGs to be met, these services must be offered directly by governments, with the necessary costs being financed by governments themselves. While PPPs offer financing options for cash-strapped governments, they impose higher costs on more marginalized sections of the people and also on backward regions, for example, by raising user fees and by being focused on more developed regions. Secondly, PPPs may exacerbate inequalities by pushing the poor and more marginalized groups, such as women, indigenous communities, and such others, out of these services or limit them to low quality and even more underfunded public services. On the other hand, the rich benefit more from PPP or privatized services, and in turn stop cross-subsidizing the poor, which is, the crux of how public services are actually provided. Therefore, we should be careful that PPP models do not compromise goal 10 on addressing inequalities and of leaving no one behind. This is particularly important in the time of COVID-19, as we have seen that supply of medicines, vaccines, ventilators, masks, PPEs have all been controlled by large private corporations, and private health services have extracted enormous patients from patients worldwide. The loss of access to public services, it has, a very much a gendered face. As the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women has pointed out, privatization and PPPs may aggravate adverse consequences on the participation of girls and women, especially from lower income households, as costs go up for key social services and boys are given preference. There are also implications on teachers who are largely women, as low-fee private schools often tend to pay lower salaries, often below minimum wage rates. So that is why we need to be, aware of the gender dimensions of PPP models. Let me come to infrastructure, which is a major area where PPPs have proliferated, both for their financing advantages and for bringing in advanced technology, including green technologies. However, maintaining environmental sustainability standards and ensuring clean technologies is not an automatic ingredient of PPPs, and this may need strict approval and monitoring policies and their strict implementation by the governments. We have seen the proliferation of privatization and of foreign direct investment in the name of green technologies worldwide, but have seen a simultaneous dilution of these standards. So this area needs to be carefully watched. New technology is one of the key benefits the private sector can bring to PPPs. While new and innovative technologies can contribute to efficiency, they also come with their share of challenges. The burning issue now is the aggressive control of technologies through the increasing use of intellectual property rights by private corporations, even in PPP ventures, and whether these are related to environment or climate technologies, health, or in other areas. We see the epitome of such control in technologies related to the pandemic. For example, even in vaccine development through the PPP models, there needs to be a waiver on IP rights and transfer of technology from the private sector to the public for easing, instead of constraining access to necessary products and services. Let me come to digital technology, and I know everyone's really interested in this. We know that digital technology use has seen a tremendous spurt, and governments worldwide, even in developing countries, have moved to embrace digital technology in all segments of their work. Here, the issue of ownership and control of data remains critical. The collection of a huge amount of biometric and other data of possible beneficiaries for identification, monitoring, and payment of benefits actually compromises citizens' privacy rights. Moreover, under PPPs, Such data is owned by private digital companies and aided by the use of artificial intelligence and algorithms can be used for enormous profit making by the companies, but is rarely to the benefit of the citizens. Now, global trade rules on e-commerce are also proposing free data flows, which means even national governments will lose control over such data. Under PPP models, even government data may be handed over to private companies. This poses a major challenge to a just use of digital technology for public benefit. And again, this area needs careful monitoring and accountability. Another key issue overall is, I would say, regulation and accountability of private sector partners. Making companies accountable and responsible is a must for recovering better.
So Mr. Yoon will have to write the, as usual, big questions. The first one, what do you think opportunities and challenges of P4G are? And second, what does the grassroots civil society demand for the inclusive P4G? I do believe that she will use some of the Korean experiences, especially civil society, understanding about the P4G. Okay, so Yoon, Mr. Yoon, you will have 10 minutes. So now the floor is yours.
I'd like to discuss 2 points here. The first is about P4G, the Korean civil society understands. The second is the P4G, the Korean civil society demands. Our first question is about market-driven solution. A market facilitates trade and enables the distribution and resource allocation in a society. The market allows any tradable item to be evaluated and priced. We need to think of 2 points here. Whether the market the P4G defines includes a common for society and needs for people, and how to secure the public interest of the commons for the market system that exists for a private interest. From our examination, we hardly find out the approach or strategy of the P4G to secure the public interest of commons or needs from the market system, a market-driven solution. In our understanding, the P4G focuses on the continuity of growth through the market system, which means the public interest left behind. Frankly speaking, the concept of market growth itself is not a transformative idea for me, especially in the era of global extinction, because the growth is the main concept of our 20th century economic well-being, which has led to climate risk and extinction. We think the solution for green transformation must put its priority on the common interest, not the private interest, because we have ignored the common interest. As a result, we face the great extinction. We believe the multi-stakeholder engagement mechanism would be a better solution to supplement the value of market system and transform our world more inclusive and ecologically sustainable. The second question is how the P4G defines the impact. According to the P4G website, the P4G intends to drive investment in innovative business models through the partnership funding. However, there is no clear definition of what the impact means and what criteria they have to select business models for investment, and even rarely have an idea what transformation they pursue. We, not only Korean civil society, but also Asia-Pacific civil society groups, believe the impact must be on the realization of development justice, which means environmental justice, social justice, economic justice, redistributive justice. Justice is a key concept of the impact must have for this transformation in the 21st century. Of course, that is quite different from the concept of market. Our third question is about who initiates the transformation of our world. Actually, it's about the governance issue of the P4G. According to the P4G, the transformation seems to be led by a global market with the government. It cannot be said it is wrong in one aspect, particularly physical infrastructure, such as a transportation network, a power grid, and a sewage and waste disposal system in developing countries requires a huge investment from global partners. However, we think people drive the market fairer and more environmentally friendly through their ethical consumption as a consumer and a citizen. Recently, we see ESG is so hot among the global enterprises and even the small and medium-sized companies for their sustainable business management. Actually, these business management tools include the impact investment and CSRs for sustainable development have been introduced for the past 30 years after the adoption of Agenda 21 in 1992, but rarely mainstreamed in the business and industry for the time being. The more social consumers demand, the more companies react. Particularly, young people strongly demand the change with the regulation of a market to secure commons for their future survival. At that point, local or national demand is very important for the design of global partnerships, particularly people's needs. The local community actually can react to people's needs more effectively, which means the local level ecosystem contributes to people's social and environmental well-being. However, we cannot find local level partnership in the P4G, which is vital to create local economic ecosystem that makes the local community sustainable. Even in the governance of P4G, grassroots civil society groups or grassroots parties of the P4G partnership initiatives are not found in the decision-making process. Where are they? Key persons to transform our world. In the P4G governance, only global companies, governments, and global organizations join without people. The last question we raised is the P4G another greenwashing by the global market? Some Korean CSO groups boycott the P4G for greenwashing. We are also concerned about greenwashing of the P4G. Why do we concern about greenwashing of the P4G? Because the first is its strong market orientation, only voluntary action without regulation and responsibility. The second is the low visibility of public interest in its initiatives. And lastly, discordance between the government's words and action.